This is our very first podcast. It's my very first podcast. I don't know about you, BJ.
I guess I kind of have a streaming show, kind of quasi podcast.
Do you really?
I do.
What do you cover?
I actually talk about Southern Maryland, local businesses, local politics. I try to highlight some of the organizations that are doing good things in my community.
Yeah? Are you part of? So did you start this podcast or you just like?
I started.
Nice.
It's a COVID project.
The COVID project?
It was a COVID project.
Oh, a COVID project.
It's called Sunday in the Park.
Sunday in the Park with
Yeah.
William Roosevelt Hall III.
Yeah, I have a co-host. Her name is Adrienne Michelle.
Adrienne Michelle.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe you can invite me onto your podcast sometime.
Absolutely. Be like, hey, man. It's like, he's not really local.
So how do we know each other, BJ?
But we didn't introduce ourselves.
That's true. We did not introduce ourselves. I sort of introduced you. My name is Stephen Cody Reynolds. Mm-hmm. I'm running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District of Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Where's that?
That,
I mean,
geographically speaking,
yeah, in Oregon.
would be in Oregon, southwest, primarily southwest of the city of Portland.
Okay.
Starting at the outskirts of Beaverton and Hillsborough, going through Yamhill and Marion counties, all the way encompassing Salem and running down the Willamette Valley.
New seat?
It's a brand new seat, yes. And there is currently nobody, I feel, who can represent it better than me.
All right. Well, my name is William Roosevelt Hall III. People call me BJ, from Birmingham, Alabama, and I will be running for county commissioner in St. Mary's County, Maryland.
So, BJ running for county commissioner in Southern Maryland.
Yeah. So back to how we know each other.
Yeah, we haven't covered that yet, have we?
Man. C3.
Go C3.
Yeah.
Fighting Cox.
It's Charlie Company in the 3rd Regiment of the United States Military Academy.
So BJ is running for office. I'm also running for office, and I think one of the things that, that obviously ties us together is our shared experiences as cadets and then officers in the Army.
Yeah, man.
And, where we come from as individuals is people who are looking to serve their communities. And we do it. I think everybody does it in 1,000 different ways every day. And then some people, they choose to put themselves out there in a more public way and to serve in an effort to represent the values that, we hold dear. I think one of the things that we are experiencing currently in our country is this inability to live or see other life through other people's eyes. And that's one of the things that I think, because we have this shared foundation, like we can see things differently, but still respect each other always.
And I think that's something that may have been improved by going to the military academy. It's like by tossing, all those different people into one barracks from different areas of the country, from different life experiences, being exposed to, to similar conditions, and having to form teams, right? So we were the same year group, same company, had to make things happen together, as a 03C3 group. Yeah.
It's absolutely true. And it's, we've kept in touch over the years. We've never really drifted apart. And, we have classmates that, I wonder what he's doing. But, I never had to wonder because I always knew, we'd stay in touch. I'd see the things you were doing via social media, You are always doing great things, man. And I've always been proud to say that BJ Hall is my friend.
I think you kicked me out the football league, though, the fantasy football league.
No, I'm pretty sure you just didn't pay your dues. And
that's probably true. That's probably true. I might still owe you $100.
You probably still do owe me $100. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, it's the world we live in, man. It's fractured. But I think that when more people like us who have a shared experience, who have the ability to sit down and talk and bridge differences, or at least discuss positions, in a way that isn't accusatory or attacking, I think that's important. And
it's probably good that we address this piece. Party affiliation.
Party affiliation.
Yeah, man.
So what is your party affiliation?
Well, as of a couple of weeks ago, I am a Republican.
And how do your friends and family feel about this?
Oh, man, they were so excited to find out that me, BJ Hall, a black man from Birmingham, Alabama, was running as a Republican.
As a Republican?
Yeah, man.
Well, nobody in my family is surprised that I'm running as a Democrat. My politics tend to, I'm a moderate, but more than anything, I'm an American, and that's how that's the lens through which I see things. How can I best serve the people based upon the values that I hold dear? But yeah, like we've become tribal,
Yeah, man.
It's like, you're a black man, you can't be part of the Republican tribe. Apparently.
and you definitely can't wear one of those red hats. It's like I get nervous when I wear an Alabama hat these days. It's like, no, it has an A on it, please. Yeah. Don't cuss me out.
It's a little too red, bro. It's a little too red.
Like, oh no, that's not crimson. That is not crimson. So no, it's funny because it's almost like you can tell so much about someone's personality based off of their party affiliation. I'm just like, I don't think that's necessarily the case. So we make those assumptions, or some people make those assumptions. It's like they pigeonhole you just based off of the fact that you're an NAACP branch president. You do so much work in the community. You do this and that. It's like, you have to be a Democrat. It's like, word? It's like,
well, I didn't start out a Democrat. Something that not a lot of people know, because it didn't get the coverage I think maybe it should have, is that I started out as a progressive party candidate.
Is that right?
Yeah, and then because they asked me to run, and I discovered that so in Oregon we have if we vote by mail. And two, we have what's called a fusion ballot, which is where you can be nominated by multiple political parties. So my very first run for Congress, I was the Progressive Party candidate, and honestly, the response was pretty good. Given that I didn't raise any money, given that nobody really took me seriously as a candidate because I was a third party candidate, I felt like I did pretty well. In the following election, I secured the nominations of the Libertarian Party of Oregon and of the Pacific Green Party. So I am the first and only candidate in the United States to secure 3 party nominations in that way: the Libertarian, the Progressive, and the Green parties. And I think, and the way I did it was kind of what we already talked about. Like, we need to be able to listen, and we need to be able to find common ground, and we need to be able to focus on those areas where we can all agree, because right now we're focused very heavily on, what divides us, where are these things, these intractable issues that we cannot agree on, that have become so charged emotionally, politically, morally, that there is no common ground. It is me against you. It is a war amongst families. We are in the middle of a cold civil war right now. It's I don't think it'll ever get to shooting the way the original Civil War did. But families are literally being torn apart. Friendships are being broken because people are focusing on the one issue that they're so charged about emotionally that they cannot see past it to find the common ground that we need to stand on to move our country forward for everybody.
You mentioned the 3-party nomination piece. Mm-hmm. It's like so you've been nominated by 3 parties prior to this run, and now you're running as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
How do local Democrats feel about that?
I don't care.
Word.
I really don't care.
So how would you, if I was one of your constituents and I was a Democrat, a faithful Democrat, what would you tell me? What could you tell me about your political views to convince me that you're the best Democrat to win the 6th?
Well, there's 3 things that are important to me in this. I think there are 3 things that are important to all Oregonians: affordable housing, affordable health care, and climate change. I think those are issues that we can all agree across political spectrum that there is a real problem around, and where I think that there will be contention is in the best way to craft effective policy to address these things. But I think without doubt, unless you are sticking your head in the sand and ignoring the reality of the world that we're living in, that you cannot say that those are not pressing issues in this day and age. And those are, so I hold these issues as being the most pressing for the people of the 6th Congressional District, the people of Oregon, people of the United States, and, in many respects, the people of the world.
I would ask you more questions about affordable housing, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about that. We can come back to that one. I'm kind of interested in some of the climate change issues. I do a lot of work with the Sierra Club, and I know that we have a lot of renewable energy projects going in our area, and I believe we were actually out. I used to work for Kiewit, and we were actually supposed to be doing. What was it? I think it was supposed to be an LNG plant out there in Oregon. Was it?
They were going to build an export facility.
Yeah.
People rallied against it. It hasn't been completely shut down to my knowledge, but it
cost me a job out there in Oregon. I could have been out there. I could have been one of your constituents, baby.
You could have been one of my constituents. So here's the thing about essentially all those issues, right? Okay. Like, you can't wave a magic wand and solve them immediately.
What are the most pressing ones?
In Oregon?
Tied to climate change.
Tied to climate. The most pressing issues tied to climate change.
Yeah.
Well, we need to accelerate the transition to a renewable-based economy. And we can do that in a lot of different ways through policy. And it's, a lot of the ways we're already doing it, things like tax incentives and research. But,
let's study something else.
Well, so I want to know, what I want to know is, how are you guys addressing these issues in Maryland? Like, what are the things that you're doing within your community?
We have a proposal that going into our zoning ordinance to change the way that solar is zoned in our area. So it's making solar farms allowed in all of our zoning. In all of our zones. So it's actually pretty dope.
So it's a zoning change that's going to allow for the solar installations within all zoning classifications within your area.
All zoning classifications. So it's going into our zoning ordinance. Well, there's a public hearing about making that change.
Isn't it really funny that, like, something that seems is like to make incredible sense, like the allowance for solar panels in residential, commercial, industrial areas. Like, why was that zoning even exclusive to that? Why are they having to even ask for permission to be able to do this? Because it seems like,
well, I mean, you're changing the law. So
was the law exclusive? Did the law say you cannot? Or was it just like the law only allows for things that it prescribes for?
No, what ended up happening was, I believe when they got it added, it was specific when it was initially added, so that someone made a specific request, and so the allowance was added to a specific type of zone classification. So
which then made it exclusive of other zones.
Exactly.
What a pain.
Yeah. So it was just poor. It wasn't really thought out on the planning side. So now it's like, all right, this really doesn't make sense. Let's add this clause in there. We're gonna have a public hearing
Isn't
about
it funny that like this has to happen at like a county level, and it has to happen at a county level everywhere in this country?
Yeah. Being that I'm on the planning commission at the county level, you see a lot of dumb stuff. It's like, wait a second. It's like you realize that the law does a lot of dumb stuff. We have a lot of rules that you can just tell that somebody just wanted to do something.
Right.
And of course, I encourage people to do something, but let's think about it. It's like, let's think about it. Let's make sure that something is well thought out and it's just not just to appease a group that's making a complaint.
So what are some of the things that you would like to implement after your successful run for county commissioner?
Me, well, I don't have as much to worry about on the climate change side. Especially when you start looking at the county level. I started thinking about utilization of resources more than anything else. And being that I am a systems engineer by education, my first thought is efficiency. So looking at our county government from the planning commission, I've noticed there's a lot of inefficiencies within our government, in our county government. Between that and exploring issues or problems that I see from the NAACP perspective, it's like, okay, wait, why does our system work like this? And so I want to bring in some systems engineers and evaluate the systems and come up with a path forward on cleaning that up. And I've seen some really good strategies taken mainly out on the West Coast, looking at Six Sigma principles and implemented at the government level. And empowering some of the government workers to find efficiencies themselves.
So, question: are these inefficiencies at a policy level? I mean, I'm sure. So, I'm sure the answer is yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. But you're saying in terms of process flow, in terms of regulation and rules, like you want to like clean out the county government and just fix.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I mean, when we're looking at a system level. I mean, of course, it's policy related, and then you have redundant resources. And it's not about eliminating the resources, but it's like, all right, how can we find the best way to utilize what we have already? Because it's like maybe we could be doing more with what we have, not necessarily saying that we need less, but it's like, all right, if we can do more with what we have, let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong believer that what you're trying to do at the county level can also be done at the federal level. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a bigger problem.
Yeah,
there's a lot more of it, but ultimately, like we do need to make our government more efficient. You know, like there's redundancies and there are unnecessary roadblocks and there are policy decisions that were made, you know, without the benefit of the ability to look into the future.
Yeah.
And now that we've reached the future, and we're realizing that some of these decisions that were made maybe weren't the best in terms of policy.
Agreed.
So you know, that's the future that we're in. Then we definitely need to reevaluate. No,
you did mention just so I can, since you asked me a couple of policy things that I would attack. This is not an efficient policies that I would adjust. It's not an efficiency issue, but it does talk about affordable housing. I think you mentioned it when we talked about incentives
sure.
versus was it coupons? Incentives versus coupons, tax incentives versus coupons.
So with regards to, so if you're asking me,
I'm asking you because I have to do a little more research on the execution of both and see how that would impact us financially at the county level. And so I would like for you to explain what you explained earlier about what you call it,
mixed income.
There you go, mixed income.
So I'm a believer that the affordable housing crisis that we currently are experiencing is a result of poor planning and NIMBYism. ultimately the density of our cities and of our communities is not high enough to support the growth that these communities and cities are experiencing. And this is not just an Oregon problem. This is a nationwide problem.
Do you think that's that density issue is consistent through with looking at your urban versus your rural areas?
I mean, clearly it's not an issue for rural areas. I mean,
clearly,
it's not an issue with.
I want to make sure that you address your rural areas because I'm a rural area person.
And I am also a rural or area person. But the problems lie within those urban boundaries, where the affordable housing problem, where people who want to live close to services, people who want to live close to their jobs, people who want to live close to their families that already live in these areas, there just isn't enough affordable housing. And the incentives do not align in a way that encourages the development of affordable housing. I mean, this is like I said, this is not an Oregon problem. This is a United States problem. Like
True.
You find it. I read an article recently, and they were talking about, and they showed pictures of development in other countries. And you have a core, a city core, a financial core, with high rises, and then the city sort of spreads from there. But it's the density of the cities is different, and they do not have necessarily the same problems that we have. In the United States, our cities are built around cores of these steel and glass monoliths, a testament to the ingenuity of our engineers and architects, but nobody can afford to live in them, and then it immediately transitions into much smaller, much less dense outer areas. I think we need to really look hard at increasing the density of our urban building projects. We don't necessarily need 40-story buildings, but 3- and 4-story buildings aren't exactly cutting it either in terms of providing enough capacity and enough housing.
You're asking for a lot there, Mr. Reynolds.
Well, these are all policy. These are all things that can be affected at the policy level.
You're going to impact our infrastructure there, Mr. Reynolds. That's going to cost me money as well.
Well, if we're talking about costing money, what's more expensive? The services we have to provide to homeless people, or the services we have to provide for everybody? Because if we can provide services that everybody uses, fewer people will complain about the cost of those services. I said fewer. I did say fewer people. I didn't say people will stop. People will always complain.
True story.
People will always complain. Yeah. So you, as being a rural, someone representing a more rural area of Maryland, it may be less of a concern, these sorts of like increasing density problems. How do you address if housing isn't a problem in your rural areas?
Well, it is a problem. And it goes back to the supply, because we have a wait list of over 2,000 people for affordable housing, and looking for different options to help encourage development of affordable housing is something that I'm interested in. We have a concentration of affordable housing that it is undesirable, and
you're talking about the increase in density.
Well, no, it's one of those things where it looks like we've encouraged the affordable housing to go to one specific area.
It's
okay. Well, it's not necessarily increasing the density. It's just increasing the density of affordable housing, yes, but not necessarily increasing density when you consider a population.
Right.
So
this is where I think that mixed income development is key, right? Like, because it's been in the past in the United States through policy, through redlining, through all sorts of things. We've sort of forced groups around, into areas where we want them. But what it's done is it's created these lines, and a mixed income addresses this specifically through the use of tax incentives and, preferential zoning treatment, all sorts of different things that you can affect at the policy level, to encourage the development of housing where one building will have the entire spectrum of income that exists within a community, and that's, a lot of times you see it as a thing like, this 20-unit apartment building, 20% of it is set for 40% below market rate, 20% set for 20% below market rate, and then the rest is market rate. These are the sorts of developments we need more of. Right. Especially when we're talking about going into an un or less developed area and replacing existing housing stock with new housing stock. If we're going to remove, if we're going to
displace,
if we're going to displace, we need to have an option for emplacing those people who were displaced, so that they don't have to leave the communities that they've grown up in, that they have their ties to, that they have families within and friends within, and that they've established themselves and their lives in.
Yeah, man. I feel obligated to talk about this displacement issue.
Sure. If we like it, this is a free flowing podcast. We can talk about anything and everything.
Yeah. So, I guess one is like, how do you address this displacement at a policy level, especially when we're talking about potentially removing people from those homes that they've lived in for decades?
Well, I would turn the question back on you. How would you address this problem?
Well, I'm not pro displacement. So,
is anybody pro displacement?
If you are pro gentrification, then
who is pro gentrification?
That's interesting. That's an interesting comment.
I mean, who is pro gentrification? Who is like, hey?
Well, they call it development. It's
okay.
Like pro development, and it's not like people go and present a project and say, hey, I'm here to gentrify this area.
Right.
so it's usually development that displaces.
So is the development of a less developed area inevitable?
Well, it depends on what you mean by less developed.
So it is an area that's underutilized, that attracts capital. Is the development of that area inevitable?
I would say yes, but.
Yes, but okay.
Yes, but because the problem that you have because you keep using the term underutilized. It's like,
all right, so
that's a loose term
within an extremely dense urban environment. You have so much knowledge and information about every individual block, every individual address. Like, the census gives us data, the city gives you data. Like, you can clearly look on a map and say the population density of this is 3 times the population density of this, and this place, it has similar access to public transit, it has similar access to food, to work, so you can see an area that is underutilized, in terms of like its ability to provide affordable. Clearly, we could take this area, increase the population density of this area by 3 or 4 times, and then.
So now I'm prepared to answer your question.
Okay, answer my question.
You've given me an opportunity to cook a little bit. So thinking about it, one of the things that we do that's required by state law in Maryland is for us to have our development plans, right? So our comprehensive plans. So our comprehensive plans, they look at our development districts, and the comprehensive plan is supposed to forecast what we're going to do for the next 10, 20 years, right? So if you have a comprehensive plan that encourages development in certain areas, then the housing issue should be addressed in your comprehensive plan. And so this kind of goes back to something that you were discussing earlier when you talk about us being in some of these positions because of poor planning. But the law is requiring us to do certain amounts of planning, ahead of time. And what it doesn't do though, it doesn't require us to follow those plans.
You know what it also doesn't do?
Yeah.
It also doesn't provide the money necessary to execute these plans.
It's true.
So you can make a plan.
It's true.
But if you do not have the will and the capital to actually complete the plan.
That's a good point. Now there should be a feasibility portion of your comprehensive plan. That's something I hadn't even considered.
So going back to what I was talking about, I believe that development of underdeveloped or underutilized spaces within urban environments is inevitable. Whether you want to call that gentrification, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, gentrification is a loaded term.
It is.
It is it carries with it a certain amount of animus that
it's like displacement,
gentrification, but urban. If I say urban renewal,
depends on who you talk about.
Yeah,
it depends on who you talk to.
Depends on who's getting renewed.
Yeah. It's like, you renewing me? Where? How?
We're getting renewed. It sounds good, but it ain't good.
Everything around me is being renewed. Oh, okay.
So, it's how does it affect the populations that exist in place? And if you have a plan in place to ensure that they remain in place, that they continue to be emplaced, I do not see the urban renewal, gentrification, development, economic.
Easier said than done, man.
Absolutely easier said than done. But these are the things that can be affected at a policy level, right? Like these are through tax incentives, through preferential zoning treatments, through all sorts of things that can be done.
Have you seen it successfully done?
Not yet, but nobody's trying.
I don't think. Let's not think that nobody's trying.
All right, so let me walk that back.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody has effectively advocated for policies yet, and that's people are trying.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, trying it doesn't matter. It's like it comes back to, can you execute or not execute on your plan?
There is only do.
Do or do not. There is no try. So, like you can have great ideas. I have great ideas. I've actually in previous runs for public office, I have put up ideas. For instance, there was in Oregon, within the Portland City area, there was a facility that was formerly referred to as the Wapato Correctional Facility, and it sat unused for a very long time after the government had paid a lot of money to build this correctional facility, but they did not allocate the funds to run it, so it just sat there. And in one of my previous runs, I said, hey, this facility has a kitchen, it has medical facilities, it's got rooms, it has admin spaces. Oregon has been experiencing a houselessness crisis for a while now. Like, hey, we can use these facilities to provide a place where we can transition people. Like, hey, we go here to get the services you need. Go here to get, to take a shower, to get a warm meal, to, get medical care if you need it. These are the, anyways, fast forward 5 years and through a public-private partnership, they've created this facility now called the Bobby Lakes Hope Center that is actually doing it. I didn't get elected in that election, so I was not part of the actual execution of this plan. But I like to think that my idea helped to provide impetus towards transitioning this center or this underutilized facility into something that is going to be fully utilized and actually provide valuable services to the community. So these are
who's financing that? The operations side.
It's done through donations. It's done through grants. The facility itself was purchased by a developer who then sold it back for, I don't know the details of the transaction, but they are in the process of doing great work. And my hope is that they continue to expand their capacities and they can, help people, give them a path. Like houselessness is a problem, but it's not intractable. It's not something that cannot be solved, but it does require that individuals seek a path out of it. Otherwise it becomes a spiral or just a Groundhog Day where every day is the same as the last. If you have no hope, then how do you get? If you have no hope, then you have no hope. But if you can provide people a path, a direction, like say, hey, go here, and they can coach you and they can provide you with all the services you need. They can get you, things like, they start with things like getting people an ID. Houseless people in Oregon qualify for healthcare. A lot of people don't know that, but you need an ID, you need an address. So they have plans. They literally have checklists of things that you need to do to get your life back to the point where you have hope.
So y'all had an empty prison that y'all paid for. Did y'all stop arresting people down there?
Nope. No. They still use the same county jails that they had before.
Okay. It's like y'all just built the whole facility. It's like, nah, we good.
Well, most people were like, what the hell did we just do? Why? But, so going back to that houseless problem, like I'm a firm believer that there are steps that we can take, and this facility is an excellent interim step, but
so it's like now you've had a great idea to address some of the houselessness in your area. What other creative ideas have you started looking into creative ways to attack some of the healthcare issues?
So I've always been a proponent of universal healthcare. I think that universal healthcare is a right that we all have. I believe it's a right. Everybody should be able to go and get healthcare when they need it. So let me tell you a story. I'll tell you a story.
Love stories.
My father, he is a man, he was a man. He died this year. He was a man that got up every day, 5 a.m, drank his coffee, went to work. And he did that for 60 something years. And during that time, he never took anything from anybody. He worked, he earned. Like there were times where we just didn't have a lot of food and he wouldn't go get food stamps or public assistance because that just was not him, whether it was his pride or whatever. He would not do it. And I learned a lot from him. I respected him above all other men. But at the end of his life, it created a problem for him because he did he'd been paying into Medicare and he'd been paying into Social Security for his entire life. And, he had no problem taking the Social Security. But in terms of medical care, he always viewed it as if I use this medical treatment, if I go to the doctor, that means other people can't go to the doctor. So he suffered in silence. And I got a phone call. Hey, your dad's in the hospital. He's got pneumonia. He might not make it. I So I got on a plane and I went and I visited him. And, the doctor was like, oh, he's got pneumonia. We're going to send him home, pump him full of antibiotics, blood thinners to help clear out some of the blood clots caused by the pneumonia. Okay, so I spent a few days with him. He seemed to get a little better. And then I went home. 2 weeks later, like a couple of days later, he goes back to the doctor. Doctor says, oh, you've got stage 4 lung cancer. We don't know how you got to this point without actually knowing you have stage 4 lung cancer, because like this is clearly very advanced. My dad, being my dad, had been sick for a long time, but he got up and he went to work and he didn't complain. So they started him on chemo. 2 weeks later, he was dead. So from the moment I got the phone call that he was sick in the hospital with pneumonia to the moment he died was 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. We live in a world where people cannot afford to go to the doctor. Like, they can't afford to lose the work. They can't afford to pay for the treatments that they need. And I don't want to live in that world. And there's a lot of different arguments about how or why or when. I don't care. We can figure this out. The important thing is that nobody should have to suffer in silence because they're afraid of what it will do to them, their life, the lives of their family, to get sick. And there is an economic argument for this as well, for universal health care. And I also believe very strongly in this. We, as human beings, we are afraid of getting sick. We have within us the capacity to do great things, every single one of us. But that fear of uncertainty, of knowing that if I leave my job, I don't have health care. My wife does not have health care. My children do not have health care. That fear that keeps us from risking to take an opportunity. You might be the most amazing artist in the entire world, but like if you can't quit your job to pursue your passion, to pursue your true talent, to pursue that opportunity that you have to better yourself, better the lives of your family, to better the world, because you're afraid that you might get sick, like you are doing the world a disservice. And
I'm actually on. I had to find my own insurance because I'm not covered by my company because I work part-time now.
Yeah.
Was it with the Mario reference? Looking for a 1-up for like 15 days. I was going crazy because of the regulation that they have in place, where I had to wait 40 days for my insurance to kick in because I missed the 12th cutoff. And so it was like,
you're driving with bubble wrap wrapped around you,
bruh. I'm talking about I was going light in the gym. I was so happy. So I ruptured my tricep tendon in October. And I'm like, man, if this had happened in September, man, I'd have been been SOL.
But for real, right? Like, think about like the people who have the capacity to do great things that are just stuck because they're afraid. And so they work and they work for a corporation. They work for the government. They could, what if my passion was to build houses and I just, I worked for a corporation, but you know what? I couldn't afford to pay for my health care for myself, my kids, my family.
So how do you make it happen? Do you address the insurance issue or do you address the cost of healthcare? Because the cost, most of us don't see the cost because a lot of us have insurance.
So there's a lot of different things you can do at a policy level.
What can you do?
One, you can do things like open enrollment to Medicare as a baseline. You should be able to enroll voluntarily into Medicare.
Well,
but
can you stop the hospital from charging me $100 for an aspirin? That might help.
So that's another problem that can be addressed. The fact that we don't use the power of the Medicare system's purchasing power to negotiate terms with pharmaceutical companies. And I appreciate the toss up. But ultimately, the reality is that most people don't use Medicare or medical care most of the time.
So, all right. So I can't lie to you.
Go ahead.
This is always interesting when I hear people. Well, I guess I'm thinking that this is interesting, being that I know that you're a believer in capitalism and the market working. How can we encourage the market to work for us with hospitals and whatnot?
So another thing that I would like to there's a couple of things here, and these are not they're not things that people talk about.
Yeah.
People one of the things that people like to say is that litigation the litigious nature of our society drives up the cost of medical care. I don't know the statistics around it. But I imagine we lived in a world where you need to go to a doctor, and a doctor had two different treatment plans. One was where you signed away your right to sue him for malpractice, and he treated you because he has a commitment to treat others through the Hippocratic Oath. And there's another plan where hey, you retain the right to sue. If you feel like you were treated poorly, or if clearly this is not a system that would work in every circumstance, or even most people would may or may not even opt into it. But it's something that we could discuss. Hey, I would like to.
A lot of these hospitals are just poorly run, and so they're poorly run businesses that we kind of keep bailing out. And so it's one of those things where our rising costs end up just kind of covering them.
Well,
and
they're also not very efficient, right? The administrative sides, aspects of with regards to reporting requirements, with regards to,
and they just started hiring systems engineers.
Well, maybe at some point they'll become leaner and meaner. But at this point, that doesn't appear to be the case. I think one of the things that has come about recently that I'm kind of excited about is the transparency that with regards to the medical costs of procedures and treatments.
That was supposed to be done through the Affordable Care.
Well, they fought it tooth and nail, but finally they've started publishing this information. So this information is starting to become public.
This is what I'm talking about. The market should be, because we should be able to see those costs.
Well, no, they are. They are starting to publish
some people.
Well,
it was supposed to be required years ago.
Yes, I'm not arguing with you. I think
I know. I'm frustrated as a person with a defibrillator who has to go to the doctor all the time, Cody.
But so hospitals have started recently. I mean, I think within the last year, they finally have people have enough of I don't know if they changed something regulatory, but they've started to. And I've read about how they've actually started to compare, and they're like, why? Even within the same insurance provider.
Yeah.
Different people on different plans are getting charged different amounts for the same treatment. It's ridiculous, right?
For the same aspirin.
For the same aspirin. So these are things that we are discovering now because of these policies around increased transparency. And maybe that's part of a greater solution. It's we force transparency onto medical care, or onto medical care providers, and or
force them to inform us of the cost before they start just giving us stuff.
Well, so there are other aspects to medical care and the cost of medical care that we also have to consider. Things like the cost of training our doctors. We are sending people to medical school. They are graduating with with millions and millions, I can't say millions of dollars of debt, but like a lot of debt,
six-figure debt.
We're talking six-figure debt, not all of them. Some of them have the good fortune of being from families that can afford this kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those people.
Some of these people have the good fortune of being so exceptional that their medical school and their schooling is paid for. But a lot of them are graduating with significant amounts of debt. And in this country, we also have a problem with capacity to train doctors. We have a population that's growing. I don't think we've had a new medical school. We certainly haven't had enough new medical schools created over the past 30 years.
Do we need more medical school?
There is a definite shortage of doctors. Doctors are overworked and at some levels underpaid for what they do. And I've had this discussion with doctors, especially considering the debt burden they're expected to take on to fulfill the role that society is asking them to fulfill. That they have clearly sought this role out, but now that they are in this role, I believe they deserve to be fairly compensated. And I would love to see a system where doctors are there's a scholarship for doctors, where they can graduate without the significant debt burdens that they're graduating with, which forces them to take highly specialized career tracks so that they can earn enough money to pay the debt back that they accrued to become doctors.
Those already exist, Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guess what? ROTC scholarships, baby. All that you got to do is come and be a doctor in the Army, in the Air Force, in the Navy.
I would love to see this. I would love to see a federal policy. I would love to see a federal policy
federal, baby.
Where we encourage and subsidize the training and development of new doctors.
That's a difficult one for people to swallow. It's like, all right, so we about to give more rich people more money. Because
we give people who are going to become doctors money to become doctors, so that they stay in those specialties like pediatrics and general practitioners, rather than becoming radiologists, so that they can become wealthy, so they can pay off their debt.
You definitely need to be encouraging them to go to those rural areas, because Southern Maryland, we only have one urologist.
One urologist in the entire Southern Maryland area.
Yeah, we all know him. Dr. J.
Dr. J.
J. Raman. Yeah. And I'm dead. This is not a joke.
I feel like there's a joke here.
There is not a joke.
No. There's a joke here. You all know him.
No, I called him Dr. J one time, and it was funny because he took me into his office, and I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. And he was like, I love Dr. J, and he showed me this picture of him and Julie Irvin from a medical conference. So it was,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty dope. But
yeah, clearly there is a shortage of doctors, especially doctors who are treating underdeveloped and underrepresented areas, rural areas specifically, but not even just rural areas, within urban areas where maybe a doctor doesn't necessarily want to go establish a practice. Funnily enough, and this might just be a great troll by the government of Cuba, but the government of Cuba will train you as a medical doctor if you agree to go treat in an underserved area of the United States. Like, you as an American can go to Cuba, become a medical doctor in Cuba, if you agree to go back to the United States and work in an area where poor people live.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, say that one more time slowly.
Yeah. The communist socialist government of Cuba has a plan where you can, as an American citizen, can go become a medical doctor, be trained by one of the best doctor training countries in the entire world to become a general practitioner. If you agree to return to the United States and serve as a medical doctor within a community, a less affluent community, let's say. You didn't know this existed. It is next level trolling by the Cuban government. in my opinion.
You know what they're doing? They're creating spies.
I mean, they're taking American citizens. I mean, they could possibly be spies. They're spying on the poor people who can't afford doctors. You know, that's. I mean, I don't know what their plan. What's their end goal here?
I mean, honestly, I can definitely put together a nice little conspiracy. Be like, oh, Cubans train the doctors go to the hood that has people that are really anti-government, and now they've created additional spies, and it's a force multiplier for the Cuban spies that we have here in our government.
For the next iteration of Red Dawn.
Nice.
So, BJ, why are you running for your position?
Couple of reasons. I think it's important for us to actually do something instead of just complain. I think that there are things that I could actually address, some of the issues that we have in our county that I could address personally. And I'd be a really good fit for some of our problems. When I talked about some of the system related issues that could be fixed on the efficiency side. And I think that I've had a lot of experience that could be useful. Looking at the project management side, some of the contract issues that we have. But it's just my desire to serve really, that really pushes me to say, all right, let's make this happen. I also want to encourage people to take a look at local government. We don't all have to run for Congress. We need people like you running for Congress, but we also need people to look at the local level, the city councils, the school boards, the county commissioners. Those are very important pieces of our government. And if we don't have intelligent, willing volunteers to sit here and serve, then we're just leaving our government hanging. It's like a lot of time we have people that are just not, well, people don't understand. I don't think people realize the importance of local government. And I want to make sure that I emphasize that.
I think you're true. That's true. And I admire what you're doing. What you're doing is important. You know, it's like, in one of my capacities, like with regards to like my business activities, you know, one of the things that we're looking for is people who are good fits for jobs, but don't necessarily want that job. Right. And sometimes you just got to ask these people to do the job. Like, do this job, please, because you are perfect for it. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I was asked, I was like, you know, and now that I've been on this path, I want to continue on this path, right? Because I've met so many people who are, please keep going. We need more people like you in these positions. I think what you were saying without saying was that a lot of the people who end up in these positions are the people who start out wanting these positions. And then once they're in these positions, they like the trappings of the position. And then they never leave. You know, so yeah. I know you to be a good man, BJ.
Oh, I'm flattered.
I know it. I've known you for 24 years now.
Oh, man.
20. We've known each other a lifetime.
Pretty much.
And I will support you fully in your run. And I'm excited for the people of South Maryland because they get to be represented by a man like you.
Got goosebumps, man.
Well, that's not much attention. It's,
and you know, I ride with you, man, because I'm actually surprised that you're running. But I'm happy to see that because I know you to be someone who cares about people, and the opportunities that you take to reach out to me and see, hey, BJ, how can I support you? It's like that makes me feel, I don't know. I don't want this to sound like you bought it or anything like that, but I definitely appreciate your desire to help all all corners of the country as much as you can. You know, it's like I'm sure that I'm not the only person that you reach out to and say, "Hey, what help do you need?" And so, and I appreciate the fact that you go out of your way to reach, because I know I hadn't called. You know, this is something that you've done just because you saw some of the work that we were doing down there. So I appreciate you just being a good guy and trying to help some of your people. So,
well, you'll always be my people, BJ.
My guy.
I think we can end the podcast on that.
Yeah, man.